Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Everything You Want to Know About Payment Processing, presented by Cargas Systems and Avatas. We encourage you to use the questions pane on your webinar control panel to post questions you have for the presenters during the webinar. Questions will be reviewed and answered at the end of the presentation. Today's webinar will be recorded and posted on the cargasenergy.com website. Look for that post to be up in a few days. With that, I'll pass you over to Ran from Avatas to get started with today's webinar. Thanks, Ran.
Thank you, Megan and Harmony. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ran Beng, and I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Avatas Payment Solutions. Some of you may already know who we are, but for those that don't, we are a payment processor that specializes in the energy marketing space. So So this slide I just put together is just a brief information about Avatas, who we are. Avatas is the pioneer of payments in the energy marketing industry. It was founded by our co-founders, Tracy and Larry Richmond, in 2005 that had led a multi-year lobbying effort to reclassify energy expenses as utility. Before that, a lot of energy merchants were set up incorrectly. They were set up as retail, where they were paying retail pricing, which cost them a lot more if they were to set up as utility. So what happened was Larry and Tracy fought with the card brand for many years, and the results after the reclassification, which helped lowering a lot of the processing rates, saved the industry over about $1 billion. And we are a trusted payment provider for over 1,000 merchants in the energy marketing space. Today's agenda, I will basically just walk you through, basics of merchant processing, what interchange is, what your pricing model is, and what PCI is compliant and why it's important for merchants to accept credit cards. And then at the end, of course, we'll open up for Q&A. So what is payment processing? So as a merchant, when it comes to what matters to you, whether or not your customer is able to use his or her credit card, if a card gets declined, you want to be able to explain the process to your customer. Can't just give them just a simple reason that, yeah, your card just got declined. You sort of wanted to go explain the details of how everything works. So what we did here, we had put together this chart that walks you through on how payment processing works. So you have a customer who comes in the shop and wants to buy, your products or wants to use a service. They'll swipe or key their credit card into your terminal, your merchant terminal, whether it's a hardware terminal, a gateway, or a point-of-sale system. The transaction will get sent from the merchant processor to the credit card network. And the purpose of this credit card network is to control where credit cards can be accepted, and it facilitates the transactions between merchants and credit card issuers. Once it goes through there, it'll send the transaction to the card holder's issuing bank. The issuer is the bank or credit union that backs up the credit card, backs the card financially. And then once the result is received, the transaction will get sent back to the credit card network, and then it gets back to the merchant processor. Once it gets to the merchant processor, that will get sent back to the merchant, and the merchant will either get an approval or declined on the sale. Okay, so what is interchange? When you're setting up a merchant account, it is important to understand what fees you are paying and why you are paying it. Interchange is one of the fees that are paid by merchants for accepting credit cards. It does consist of two parts of it. There's a set of percentage applied to the dollar value of each transaction, and then there's a set of transaction fees that the card issuing banks get for the processing, like Visa, Master, Discover card purchase transaction. So basically, it's like a wholesale percentage that Visa, MasterCard, and Discover charge for authorizations and settlement of any card transaction. So this basically forms the bulk of processor costs, and it's how merchant account rates are determined. So I'm gonna break this down, make it a little more simple to understand. If your customer spends $100 using their MasterCard, the merchant, you're the merchant, pays a percentage of this for taking the card. So to make it simple, let's say the fee is 4%. That would mean on a $100 transaction sale, the merchant is paying for $4. Of that, around $3, roughly around $3 and some cents, it goes to the issuing bank. And then the remaining of, let's say, the issuing bank got $3.20. The remaining of 80 cents is divided up among the other parties in the transactions, which, about 34 cents of that will go to the MasterCard. On a more broad level, interchange is the foundation that defines the entire cost structure of credit card payments industry. It is also the same regardless of who the merchant uses as their processor. We don't control those, so no matter as a merchant, no matter who you use as your processor, the interchange rates will always remain the same. It doesn't change at all. And then there's also a few factors that determine which interchange category a card will go to. So the way the category is defined are generally 3 different factors that influence the interchange rate that you pay. So the factors include the industry type. So if you're a utility merchant, that includes oil and gas business. If you're a retail, an internet merchant, gas stations are just some of the few different types. So in order to qualify for a certain category, the transactions must meet a variety of factors. And then you have the type of card that you accept. So whether your customer uses a debit card, reward card, fleet card, corporate, or international card, rate changes depending on the card type. So generally, speaking, debit cards tend to have the lowest rates, while rewards international corporate cards, they tend to have a higher percentage of that. And most we tell people because international corporate cards, they're higher risk. That's why the rates are a little bit higher. And then the type of transaction. So if whether the card is swiped, keyed, entered via website or something else, the rate does change as well too. Again, a lot of times with key transactions, we consider that as a higher risk account where you don't see your customer. A lot of times it's done over the phone or over to the internet, so those are considered higher risk. Unlike the retail where you actually see someone face to face, you see the card, you can ask for the ID that's matched with the credit card. And then there's also some miscellaneous factors that could cause the rate to changes, like timeless of batches. If usually when the transaction is done, we always recommend to have the transactions be batched out at the end of the day. If you wait within 24 to 48 hours, the fees that you were supposed to qualify, it actually downgrades. That means you just pay a higher fee. So that's just important. Missing validation code, and then if your authorization and settlement report doesn't match. So what is your rate? Now that we've gone over the interchange, I want to go over about how your rate is set up. If you're looking to accept credit card for business, your merchant processor will charge a discount rate, and then there's a transaction fee. And of course, there's other fees as well involved having a merchant account. There is going to be like a service or monthly statement fees that they charge, any other miscellaneous. It all depends on your processor. If it provides you an online processing, where they do charge you an extra amount of dollar per month to use that service. So depending on your pricing model, your rate does vary. So your discount rate, it is a percentage of the dollar amount of transaction. It is a fee paid by the merchant to credit card processor as a fee associated with accepting, just general use of credit cards like Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover. And then, typically this fee runs between, within the basis points or in your, high 2% to 3%. I've seen, other processors that charge a lot more as well too, but the standard it is, if you're set up as a pricing model interchange, you get charged basis points. If you're set up as a tiered pricing, you get charged, the 3-tier pricing, and which I'm going to go over that after this too. So depending on how your account is set up, the fees will vary. And then you have your discount authorization. It is an authorization process of, confirming whether your customer's credit card has sufficient funds to purchase goods or services from you, and also confirm whether the card is valid. And usually with that, it could vary from anywhere 10 cents to up to 25, 30 cents per transaction. Now, and then to obtain the authorizations, it goes through a credit card machine. So you have a hardware where you have it at your retail store. It's through an internet, which is, in the internet you use a gateway as your machine, and then over the phone, which is also known as a mail order or telephone order. And then you have the interchange and assessment fees. Again, these are fees that are charged by the card brands like Visa, MasterCard, Discover. Merchant processor has no control over this, over these fees at all. So they are considered, pass-through fees, where a processor don't have control over it. It is passed by the card brands. Okay, so what is your pricing model? When you're looking for the best credit card processor for your business, the pricing model the processor uses is very important. Most times when you call a processor and you want to set up a merchant account, they should be able to determine how to set you up the proper way based on the type of business you have. If you're retail, if you're an online, if you're a business to business, wholesale business, they should be able to guide you and set you the proper way. So it is, so pricing models will determine the processing fees are charged and then it passed to you as a merchant. It is important that you are set up correctly. So the most common used pricing models are the following here that you see here. These are the top 3 pricing models that are used with most processors out there. So let's talk about tiered pricing. You have the qualified, the mid-qualified, and then the non-qualified. This is one of the popular tiered pricing, which is they call the 3-tier pricing. It is the most popular method, and it is the simplest system for most merchants to understand, just because you just have a flat rate of qualified, mid-qualified, non-qualified. And it's popular with small, swiped, or keyed merchants. So let's say you're a swipe merchant and you're set up as a tier pricing. In order for you to qualify for the qualified rate, which is lower than the mid and the non-qualified, the card needs to be swiped and is non-rewards personal credit card and debit card. And then you will downgrade to the mid-qualified if when you use reward cards, again, reward cards, it's higher than the standard personal credit card and debit card, with some less expensive corporate card and government cards. If you keep the card with the correct AVS, AVS stands for address verification, and then you'll downgrade to non-qualified if you are set up as a swipe merchant, but then you manually key in the credit card, and if you key in the credit card with no zip code or is entered but have the incorrect billing information. So that's for the swipe merchant. If you are a keyed merchant, again, very similar to the swipe merchant, in order for you to qualify for the rate, qualified rate, the card needs to be keyed non-rewards, personal card or debit card, where the address verification, which is the AVS, and order number are entered. Unlike on a swiped account, the AVS and the order number do not need to be correct for some reason. And then in order for you to fall into the mid-qualified, is when you keyed in corporate, government, or reward cards, and then AVS or order number are not entered. And then in order for you to fall into the non-qualified, when you accept more expensive corporate card, and then there's government international card, and then AVS or order number are not entered as well. And then you have the B2B. B2B is considered like level 2, level 3. This is short for business to business that sells products to other businesses rather than selling them to consumers. Usually the fees for business to business is higher than the retail pricing. And then you have the interchange plus pricing. This is pass-through fees from the card brand. So with this pricing model, it has the potential to, have the lowest cost and most competitive pricing especially for energy space, where you can actually qualify for the utility rates. So a merchant, again, a merchant will pay the true cost on each transactions. This is the interchange, the acceptance fees. And then your processor will charge a small markup of discount rate. And it's usually when you're set up as interchange, you should be set up at your discount fees usually in basis points. It shouldn't be anything more than a percentage. The standards of the discount rates for that is usually in between 20 to 25 basis points. So it's not even close to a percentage. So that's why with utility merchants, it's best that you're set up with utility interchange plus pricing. And then, so now that we've gone over the basics of processing, I really do want to talk to you about PCI compliance, because it does somehow relate it together. It is important to understand what PCI is and why it's important for your merchant account. For those that are currently accepting credit cards, should be familiar what it is. So PCI stands for Payment Card Industry Security Standards Council. It is a global forum of industry leaders that was launched in 2006 for the ongoing development, enhancement, storage, and then implementation of security standards for account data protection. PCI applies to merchants of any size that accept credit card payments for their business, whether you're mom and pop or high-end business. If you intend to accept credit card for your business, you want to make sure your data is secured and that you are PCI compliant. PCIs, they're constantly working to monitor threats and improve the industry's means of dealing with them. So throughout enhancements of PCI security standards, and then by training their security professionals as well. And then so merchants who is accepting credit cards need to become PCI compliant every year. There is, if your processor should reach out to you once a year to let you know. Usually they send an email out, within or put the statement message as well to give you heads up what's going on. But you're supposed to be PCI compliant every year. There's a survey that needs to be done. Again, the primary goal is to protect cardholder data to, not cause any type of breach on your account. Go back to, why PCI, why it's important, to make sure that you're PCI compliant. Well, a lot, 90% of breaches occur at small businesses, and merchants are at the center of payment card transactions. There are 20% of small business that are victims of cyber crime each year. 81% of credit card fraud take place in businesses with 50 or more employees. And then there's 40% of reported breaches come from in-house employees. So, breaches can occur anywhere, almost anywhere in the card processing environment. So if you are using a point-of-sale devices that are not encrypted properly, if your personal computer is not secured, you're using, computers weak services at a wireless hotspot, or if you're going to, shop using an application that is not secured. Why do you need to be PCI compliant? It goes back to the previous slide. So, while breaches at large companies make the headlines, most fraud takes place in small businesses, and we just don't realize that. And it can be dangerous to your business. There's 500 data security fine, and then there's a $50,000 non-compliance fee if you are fined or breached. 6 months after a breach, 60% of small businesses no longer in business. And then 2/3 of the consumers hold merchants responsible for data breach. And this is why it's so important that, why processors, continuously try to reach out to merchants to make sure that that everyone's compliant, because you're going to be responsible for it. These are not small amount of dollars. You're talking about in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're responsible for. So, while the terminology and requirements to keep customer data secure may seem overwhelming, at the end of the day, it's really common sense. You just gotta, follow the procedures, what needs to be done, as the merchant to protect your business. Because small businesses are victims of fraud every day and the damage can be very significant, security environments are in place for a reason. All merchants are required to comply with the PCI data security standard. This is an industry-wide requirement. This to ensure that cardholder data is handled properly. It minimizes the risk of breach by following industry best practices, and then PCI compliance is an annual requirement again. So, we personally, we recommend that merchants don't think of it as a requirement. Think of it as a best practice to keep your business safe. Don't get caught up with the term. Security really is just common sense. So to protect your business, protect it like it's your home. What is the access points and how to lock them up? Would definitely recommend look and use the PCI DSS requirements manual. So how do I help ensure my business is PCI compliant? So think about ways someone can break into your home. Your business has similar access points, right? So what do you need to check and lock before you go to bed? So before you go to bed, you always check your front door, you check your back door, your slide doors, and your windows. Apply these framework to help your business. So your front door is your website, the back door is your business operating system software, and then your side door is your customer's data, and then your window is your internal IT and procedures. So by being on the lookout for certain things and taking some common sense steps, you can drastically, reduce the risk to your business. So your website is like your front door. So why is a security risk? Well, everyone in the world can see it and have access to it. Their data are being transmitted as text over internet. It's also potential access to your back office. And so what you should do as a merchant to make sure you are not at risk is, use SSL protocol. SSL stands for Secure Sockets Layer. This will create a secure link between a server and client machine. And then, conduct an annual scan. And then keep your public page on its own network. If your public and business networks aren't connected, the threat is reduced. So that could help you protect your business. And then your business software is like the backdoor to your business. Again, why is it a security risk? You use it for payment. All your customers and company data flows through it. Breach gives significant access to the most sensitive information. So what should you do? Well, just make sure you question your provider and only use someone who gives you answers are that you are comfortable with. Okay, so your data management is like the side door to your business. Again, why is it that, why is it a security risk? Is there is transmission risk between customers and you, and then if you have poor document management and disgruntled employees opening unsecured email and unsecured storage information, in order to prevent these risks, we recommend that getting an electronic data storage to store all any personal documents. Use an IVR, online customer-driven data entry. Have information storage and destruction protocols. And then you have physical secured location which restricted access. And then always, you want to check the background credit checks on your employees. And then your internal IT and process is like your windows to your business. Why is it at a security risk? There are a lot of access points. User create a large universe for potential breaches. If you're using unsecured computers with sensitive information, and if there's phishing, spyware, viruses, multiple users and weak passwords. What you should do as a merchant is, first, require individual user IDs and password. This will allow for restricted access and then tracking and then the ability to shut down accounts for employees that leaves the company. Create strong password policies where, a lot of times people just, use the easiest one where it's just, 1, 2, 3, summer. We always recommend using uppercase, lowercase, numbers, signs to create a stronger password, so that way no one's easily hacked into your information. Don't keep sensitive information on computers. This will help protect it from spyware, phishing, and then viruses. And then always want to use firewalls to protect services. Okay, so we are going, getting to the end of the webinar now. And before I wrap this up, I wanted to just recap on what I went over. If you are looking to set up merchant account or already have one, make sure you are set up correctly. Check your processor. Go check with your processor. If they're not able to tell you, you can definitely reach out to me or to our team, and we can, based on reviewing your processing statement, we're able to tell you if you're set up properly. You want to make sure you understand your pricing model. Again, ask your processor or reach out to us, and we do provide a free analysis. All you need to do is just send us a statement, and then we can review it and can tell you exactly what your fees are. If the pricing model is set up correctly based on your business. And then want to make sure that you understand the importance of PCI. Again, don't think of it as a requirement. Think of it as just best practice to keep your business safe. And then, protect your business like you protect your home. Lock them up. So if you want more information or a copy of the presentation, then definitely reach out to me. And if you